Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. How you doing? It's Fade to Black. Yeah, man. Continuing another great week here on the show. Today's Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. I am your host, Jimmy Church. And last night, JK Ultra was with us. An amazing show. She's amazing. Continuing tonight, we have JP Hague. And we're going to be talking about the Indian Ocean, in and around the Indian Ocean. I've called the show Mysteries of Mauritius. And so we'll be doing that tonight. It's going to be a great show. And then tomorrow night, David Palmer is here. It's a full evening with the Leo King. And then Thursday night, Glynis McCants is with us. And we're going to be doing the power of numerology. Rumor has it, she's going to run my numbers. That's right. So we will do that on Thursday night. An amazing week here on Fade to Black. And I do have a bunch of events coming up throughout the year. And first up is Contact in the Desert. And this is May 30th. Today is May 14th. So coming up on May 30th, I will be hosting their 10th anniversary party. That's right. It is the 10th anniversary of CITD. So that's going to be Thursday night, May 30th in the Crystal Ballroom there at the Renaissance Hotel out there in Palm Springs. And then coming up right after that, June 21st through the 23rd, the summer solstice, is Disclosure Fest / Stairway to the Stars, also out here in Los Angeles at Castaic Lake. You can get tickets for that. The full map of the events. We have multiple stages. This is a huge event. It's outdoors. We have the beach at Castaic Lake. You're going to want to be there. So the information for that is below at disclosurefest.org. And then after that is the 2024 Conscious Awards. That's in August, and that's in Miami, Florida. Again, the links to everything are below. And so I had a very, 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 very strange day today. And I didn't post this because, well, you'll understand why here in a second. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, this is what happened. Everybody knows I get on my bike, my Harley, and I ride out to Elizabeth Lake. It's about 20 miles from my house. And over the last week, I've been posting pictures and talking about this. There was a missing body. And the police, the LA County Sheriff's Search and Rescue, the SWAT team, huge setup out there, divers, boats, and looking for this missing kayaker who his kayak floated to shore. Body's missing. So they've been searching, and I've been going out there, and I talked to the police. I posted pictures. I posted a video. They had a helicopter and all kinds of things. So yesterday I was out there and the amount of personnel was just incredible. So today I rode out there, and this is what happened. I pull up and the gates are open. So I pulled down into the picnic area, and it was surreal because there's been such a large police presence there over the last week. And I parked my bike, and right at the end of the parking lot, when you first pull in, underneath this tree, the family of the missing kayaker has been underneath this tree with these chairs and just camped out. They're still there, right? But the police are gone. So I parked my bike, and next to me is, his name's Kirk. He's probably listening right now, and sitting in his Jeep. And I said, did they find the body? And he goes, I don't know. And I said, that's the family down there, right? He goes, yeah, I think so. So okay, all right. And then, so we're talking about that. And then somebody comes up from the shoreline, and I said to him, I said, did they find the body? He goes, no, I don't think so. Okay, yeah, this is strange. What is going on? Because the family's still here. So this is what happens. We say our goodbyes. I jump on my bike and I pull down to leave out of the parking lot at the end. And I pull up to the family, turn off the bike, and there's 2 women standing there. And I said, "Are you the family?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "So what's going on? Did they know?" Okay. And as I'm sitting there, and I said, my thoughts are with you, and they're in tears, and I get that. I totally get it. It was just so sad. At that moment, this is what happens. We all hear some yelling. Okay. And like a scream and some yelling. And it's coming just right there. There's just a little incline, just right in the trees, right there, right behind us. And we both, and somebody comes running down the hill, full sprint. And another family member blows past us, says something in Spanish to the 2 ladies, jumps in his car, and takes off. And they said they found him. They said that to me. I said, blessings, and I take off, and I ride up literally 50 yards from where we were. I pulled up, and there's a sheriff's SUV there with its lights on. That's it. And me and 2 other people. And I look, and I pull up behind the sheriff's. I don't want to say anything else, actually. It's just the whole thing was too disturbing, too surreal. And I pull up behind, and I look down the hill, and I took out my phone, and I took some pictures of the sheriff and what was going on. And I took a bunch of pictures. They found him. And it was crazy. It was crazy. It was just one, and I went, you know what? I can't be. I can't unsee this. I'm done. And I started up my bike and I drove away. And what a strange ride home. And it's just playing over and over and over in my head. And I get home, and I was like, man, I'm not going to post this. I'm just not. I'm not. I can't deal with this. It was just too much. It was too crazy. And this is a very small community here, and to go through this all week and then have it end like that. And for some strange reason, I was there talking to the family at that exact moment when it happened. And it was literally, when I say stones throw, stones toss, 50 yards, just right there. And the divers all week, and the shoreline, and looking, they were right there. And that's where he was. He was right where you see me post those pictures every day from that picnic area. That's where they found him, right there. So anyway, that was my day. So time for me to change gears and get it on, because tonight we have JP Hague. He is live. He is live from Mauritius, from the Indian Ocean, and we are going to be talking about his research about the UAP phenomena in and around the Indian Ocean. There's so much going on there. We have submerged and sunken cities. We're going to be talking about pyramids. We're going to be talking about UFOs and UAPs and what he has witnessed. He's a researcher. He's also an English and Mauritian lawyer, not Martian, Mauritian lawyer. And he's going to share his experiences and his research. He's also the director of MUFON Mauritius and the founder of UFOlogy of Mauritius and Indian Ocean. And he hails from London, but he's now not a Martian, a Mauritian. I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, JP Hague. JP, good evening.
Jimmy,
how are you,
good
sir?
morning. I'm
Yeah,
very well, thanks.
you know, this is what's cool about this is what's cool about technology. You are a time traveler because right now, right? It's May 15th there.
That's right. It's just
right?
on 6 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
And it's dark outside, so I thought I'd wear a yellow sort of shirt to kind of wake my body up.
So what am I going to have for dinner tonight after the show? You already know, right?
Could it be a barbecue, Jimmy, of some kind?
Could be. JP, before we get started, you know the drill. You get the first time guest disclaimer. So let's get that out of the way. JP, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends, and where that conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. You have to accept. You know the drill.
What else can I say but yes?
Well, you're an attorney. You're an attorney. You're a lawyer, and we got to get. You know, you've officially signed a disclaimer. So there you go. Okay, now let's kind of go backwards first, because what is going on out there right now in your research through all of this is pretty deep. But let's go back to London for a second. Let's go back to the UK. Did you have any experiences back there? Did you have an interest in ufology?
I didn't. I'd always had a kind of an interest in the unexplained. And, you know, I used to watch kind of paranormal ghost shows, ghost hunting shows, because it fascinated me. I thought, you know, it's too widespread for there nothing to be to it. And I just had this inherent interest in the unexplained, I suppose. And my first kind of real delve into UAP or UFOs was kind of during a dinner with some friends when I was a younger lawyer then, living in central London, and we went for dinner to a couple's house, friends, and the guy, he was kind of a senior manager, I think, that ran or looked after the computer systems for a large international bank at Canary Wharf at the time, and a very nice, intelligent guy. And after dinner, he completely blindsided me, and he just said, "I want to show you something." And he sort of pulled me to the side as the women were chatting, and he showed me a video of what he said or was purporting to be images from a deep space telescope, possibly Hubble, no idea. And he said, apparently this is leaked telescope or satellite footage of some kind. And it basically showed the shape of a craft, a UFO, and it looked kind of etheric. It was bizarre. And at the time, I just assumed that it was a Photoshop or a fake. But something about that evening kind of got to me. It gave me the UFO bug. And I wanted to actually start researching it and applying, analysis. My analytical mind was kind of intrigued because I knew there was something to the paranormal. You watch all these ghost hunting shows, and it's a lot of fun. And I've had experiences with apparitions on 2 occasions, and a lot of it is experiential. And it's interesting when you can bring quantifiable data or science to the table, but I don't think that gets us to the final destination, no pun intended. But anyway, I had this dinner, and after that I started to research what the UFO thing was all about. And at the time, I'm this sort of fairly junior lawyer. I'm working in one of the leading so-called magic circle law firms in London. And there's a lot of pressure to perform, and what you fit into a year of work in a magic circle firm is probably the equivalent to 5 years anywhere else. And you're acting for banks, institutions, governments, those kinds of clients. And but at the same time, we're human, and we have these hidden and subtle aspects to our lives that we don't necessarily understand or articulate because we're focusing on other stuff, depending on wherever we are in life at the time. So I started to research, and what became fairly evident to me was that you have a lot of there was a lot of entertainment around the subject, but there was also a genuine information block at government level, and that in itself was a kind of concern, because if there's nothing to it, then there's no need to kind of deny information or for facts to change when the Air Force says one thing and sends out a press release and then denies it the next week. So that was a pivotal moment for me, I call it. And there was one,
let me jump in there for a second before we move forward. With being a lawyer and having that kind of mindset where you've got to get to the truth and figures and navigate law, right? Does that help? Can you apply that mindset and that technique to the UFO phenomena where somebody's lying, right? Somebody's not telling the truth here. And does that help? And if you've got this kind of conspiracy going on, isn't that what a lawyer should do, is apply that and help this community out?
Yeah, you're right, Jimmy. There's a mindset, and in a civil case of law, you're looking in English law at the balance of probabilities, which is basically just 51% or more. If you're a judge, you have two parties. There's a case before you. You call your expert witnesses or your witnesses, and you're having to say, on a balance, where does this go, and how much do I award in damages depending on the type of case, and of course, in criminal law, there's a much higher burden of proof, which is beyond reasonable doubt, because it's about civil liberties and incarceration and, treading on human rights and civil liberties. So I kind of looked at it through a balance of probabilities. And after incessant research and trying and speaking to people as well, people that have witnessed this, on a balance of probabilities, it was a given for me. But there was a part of me that really struggled to actually accept, that it was real, in that what people are seeing is so amazing and beyond our understanding of physics or the sciences. There was a part of me that just denied it. I couldn't quite really believe it, but intellectually, on a balance of probabilities, it was totally happening. And there were information blocks, particularly in the States, which is, the bastion of Western world democracy, where there is more access to this, and you have Freedom of Information Acts like you do in the UK too. We don't have that here in Mauritius, unfortunately. But I was sort of held back by just the wildness of some of these experiences, and it's understandable. Until I had my first UFO sighting over London, central London, which is some of the busiest and most regulated airspace in Europe, if not the world. And it was, I always struggle with the date, but it was around the end of 2010 or the first quarter of 2011. So it's kind of the British winter over London. But, cold, very beautiful, clear blue skies that day. I'd gone to the cinema with my girlfriend at the time, and we're walking between a place called St. John's Wood, which is obviously very close to Abbey Road Studios, which you all know, and Swiss Cottage, which is just north of there where the cinema was. And I lived in a place called Maida Vale, and the BBC has some very well-known recording studios there too for music shows and productions. So anyway, we're kind of walking down from St John's Wood down to Maida Vale. And from that kind of area, you can see Notting Hill, you know, the famous film with Hugh Grant, and you can see the skyline of Western Central London. And I can't remember the film that we saw, but it may have been science fiction, it may have not been. But I was struggling with this, is it real or not question. And I'm sort of walking back on this beautiful tree-lined avenue on the crest of a hill, about to start descending down towards where we live. And I'm thinking to myself, is this real or not? And at the very moment that the words in my head, is this real or not, came out, what I describe as a metallic diamond-shaped object just started pulsing in and out directly in front of us over the London skyline. And it was reflecting the sunlight, and then it was dematerializing, then it's rematerializing and reflecting the sunlight. And I'm sort of just stunned. You know, I'm walking down on a footpath. There's two obviously either side of the road on this tree-lined avenue. But because there were the trees, I just walked into the center of the road. It wasn't a busy road. It was a residential kind of street with, you know, beautiful houses, some really old sort of kind of Georgian architecture going on there. And I'm just stood in the middle of the road, and I'm just looking at this thing pulsing in and out of reality, I suppose, or you know, cloaking maybe, if it wasn't a hallucination, which I don't think it was. And it kind of did that up to 5 times. It lasted several seconds, but it was literally in response to my mental process and the question, is this real or not? And my girlfriend, she didn't see it because she was sort of stood on the pavement watching me just sort of darting into the middle of the street, thinking I was crazy or something. And I just said, you know, did you see that? And she said, see what? And, you know, it was diamond shaped, rhomboid. And it took a physicality because it was reflecting the sunlight, but it was dematerializing.
Yeah, let's be very clear here. Your imagination doesn't reflect sunlight. Okay, let's just start right there.
I agree, Jimmy. I agree. But you know, you do, when you see these things, I do anyway. I question myself, and you know, I've spoken to family and friends. I've been treated very kindly about the kind of incidences that I've experienced. And you know, once my dad even said to me, could you have been hallucinating? And I said, of course, anything is possible, but it's not probable, like you say. So you just have to, you know, I try to approach it with a humility because there's so much going on to the human mind and consciousness and the psyche that we don't fully understand. And if it can appear in response to my thoughts, or anyone's thoughts for that matter, you know, what are they tapping that we can't? Is there a mental plane, or the noosphere, which is an ancient Greek concept, that they somehow, whatever they are, or it is, are able to access? And it kind of makes you feel very vulnerable as a human being, where, you know, in modern human rights terms, as a lawyer, the right to privacy is sacrosanct. It's in the European Convention of Human Rights and in the Human Rights Act in the UK and so on. And it kind of gives you a perspective on what privacy is. I mean, forget what intelligence agencies and governments are able to do that they don't tell us about, and sort of tapping mobile phones that are switched off even. But this is another level of scrutiny and transparency with something that we don't understand yet, that the ancients did kind of deal with, but it's been lost. And it just shocked me. And I know I think Richard Dolan had a similar experience. He was in north of New York, where he's from or lives, and a similar thing. He was thinking about the subject, and if I can recall correctly, and he saw a UFO. So I know it's not uncommon. I don't know about yourself, Jimmy, but it took me by surprise, and it gave me that it is real because it's just appeared, and in response to the question. And it's not the first time, but it was almost, my perception was it was designed for me. It was a personal experience. It was not an accident or coincidence. It was meaningful. Call it a synchronicity, like Jung would have coined it, where he sort of suggested that we project consciousness out into the universe and we get feedback. And I'm sure there's a degree of that happening, but there's also a reality and an intelligence to it. And that first experience near St. John's Wood, which is also near a place called Primrose Hill, where you see the whole of the skyline of London, took my breath away, and it took things to another level. It became more deeper and meaningful, and it allowed me to listen more to others that have had experiences, because I'd had that personal insight. And as I said, it's some of the busiest airspace in the world over London, and nothing goes unnoticed by radar, and certainly military over central London, where we're in the era of terrorism at the time. So yes, that was my first conscious UFO sighting.
It's like welcome to the club, JP. Welcome to the club. Oh, by the way, I got a great email from a friend today, Robert Knight, and he said,
"Oh yeah, Robert, what a great guy."
He said, "Say hi to JP for me." So I just got that out of the way. That's pretty cool. Robert Knight, he's an old friend of mine. We go way, to kids, but one of the most talented photographers on planet Earth. He's at a level that none of us really will be able to understand. But his interest in this subject is probably greater than his talent for photography. That's pretty amazing. Anyway, he's amazing. So anyway, he says hello. So you take this, your journey starts, and you go to Mauritius. Where is Mauritius?
So before that, Jimmy, there's a bridge to Mauritius, if I can just touch on it. And anyway, I sort of moved to this house in maybe like an hour from London after several years of lawyering in London. And it's not too far from London Gatwick Airport. It's called London Gatwick Airport, but it's not London. It's about 70 miles out from London, and it's inside my home county of West Sussex. So it's surrounded by forest and villages and sort of provincial towns. Beautiful place called East Grinstead. And anyway, we're house hunting, and while house hunting, in the middle of the day, I saw an apparition in one house for the first time. It was a strange experience, but more kind of empirical. At the time when we'd sort of moved into this house, there were UFO sightings over the airport, and they were seen by 3 BA British Airways jet pilots. There were 2 flat silver discs on approach to landing, and this is over the end of December, 30th of December 2012. And air traffic control picked up 6 discs in addition to the 2 that the pilots had seen. And the weird thing is that this was happening over L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology European headquarters, which is about 3 miles outside of this location. And the likes of Tom Cruise and John Travolta go there. It wasn't a cruise missile, but these objects just vanished. There was no physical presence. The information was passed from air traffic control to the police. There was a probe by the UK Airprox board, which basically examined, near misses for aircraft, and they failed to find an explanation. And this is just happening moments away from this beautiful place where we were living over the sort of short period that we were there. And that was just before moving to Mauritius, where things kind of started to heat up, so to speak. You asked me where Mauritius is. We're deep in the sort of South Indian Ocean. If you can think of the other M for Madagascar, which is the large island, and there's some brilliant animation films around this place. It's just off the right-hand side in the middle of nowhere, this tiny volcanic speck of rock, which is about 40 by 20 miles. And there's nothing south of here other than Antarctica, which I think is interesting too, in terms of the subject and how things have developed in recent years. So this is all within kind of a year and a half of that first sighting over central London, moving to this provincial town in a kind of a Victorian house where strange things were happening. UFOs sighted just down the road over the airport. And it's not the first time that Gatwick Airport or London Gatwick Airport has been closed due to so-called drones, and there was never any explanation, and the wrong people were arrested and nothing ever kind of transpired. So I kind of just really fell into this subject without really trying. It just sort of happened. And so in mid-2013, that's when I moved to Mauritius. It's part of what are called the Mascarene Islands, which is in the Indian Ocean, of course. As I mentioned, we're about 560 miles east of Madagascar, about 40 by 30 miles. So we're probably about twice the size of Hong Kong, if you can think of the scale of Hong Kong. And we're just north of the Tropic of Capricorn. So, you know, it's a volcanic island. It's tiny. There's about 1.3 to 1.4 million inhabitants here, of which about 80% are living around the capital of Port Louis or Port Louis. So it's really, you know, if you think about kind of the sky at night and being isolated in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and you can see the Milky Way galaxy and Cassiopeia and the Pleiades, it's amazing. And the light pollution, well, back then was much less than it is now. There was less development. It was the perfect kind of set, if you will, if you think of a movie set for kind of witnessing things. Truly
in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I mean, when you say the next thing south is Antarctica, the next thing south is Antarctica. Now, here's a funny little fun fact. You see the moon upside down.
That's right.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And, you know, and I've tried to explain this. So from, here's my alien hacky sack. I use this when I demonstrate the world, right? Okay, so here's the world. Okay, here's where most of us are in the Northern Hemisphere, right? Europe, United States, we're up here. You are down here. So if you're standing in the Northern Hemisphere and you're looking at the moon, your face is pointed this way. But if you're in Mauritius, you're here and you're looking up at the moon from the opposite side. And that includes everything else, right? It's because of your orientation. And also in the southern gravity. And let's hear it from Isaac Newton right now. And so, but the other part is you see more galaxies and nebula from the southern hemisphere than we do up here too as well. The night sky must be absolutely incredible from there.
Yeah, it is. It is. You can really see the Milky Way beautifully. And it's I live in the center, near the sort of mountains of the Central Plateau, and I'm surrounded by sugarcane fields, which is kind of what was grown during the colonial times, and is still the case today. And it's one of the major exports. And I think that, you know, the government could probably change what they're growing to something like hemp that's a bit more useful and profitable and better for the economy as well. But yeah, it's as I said, it was a colonial crop, and we've had 3 different colonies from Europe. We had the Dutch colony between 1638 to 1710, if I recall. So it's about 70 odd years. And then the French came here for about 100 years in the early 1700s till around 1810, when the British arrived on the north of the island and then kicked the French out. And the British were here from 1810 up to 1968, which is when the country gained independence. That's almost 160 years of British presence on the island. But culturally, despite the fact that the British were here for much longer, it's more culturally aligned with France and the French. And I think
what language is spoken?
So we speak three. Well, I'll say three. The first is that everyone speaks is Creole, which is like a dialect from. It's not a language. It's you say in French a patois, which is like a sort of spoken. It is. I mean, we should call it a language, really. I mean, it's not officially, but it's lexically very loosely based on French. But there's no there's no rules to the grammar. And then the second language is French, and then the third for kind of government and business and the like is English. So I speak French and English fluently. My Creole, I understand it perfectly, but I won't speak it that often because it kind of offends my classically trained French inside of me, which I was taught by my Canadian mother when I was a child, very young. And it's just this, I think I was wired, as you grow as an adult, the neuroplasticity isn't as good. And it just ruins my French. So I try not to speak it too much, but I understand it very well.
Look, this is where I insert a French joke, but I'm not going to. but I will say this. I mean, the opportunity you've thrown me an underpitched underarm softball pitch. I'm not going to hit it, but you must have amazing croissants. You can't lie about that.
Yeah, not bad. You say boulangerie.
I'm sure the croissants there are amazing. Now, let's swing this over to the activity there, because if you are, I mean, ET, UFO, UAP, the phenomena in general, aliens, contact, all of that. This is a global thing. It's not a United States thing. It's not a UK thing. It's not a Russian thing. It's a global phenomenon. But if you're going to hide out, now I'm just kind of guessing here, but the Indian Ocean is a good place to get things done, isn't it?
I agree. I think it's a logical choice to be here or anywhere that is sparsely populated compared to, say, Manhattan or LA. And there's a lot of history here and sort of strange, let's say, the natural world and the topography of the island is strange. The expression, Jimmy, is to be as dead as a dodo. That originates from here. The only location on Earth where the dodo was found was Mauritius. And the kind of genetic lineage and movement of the dodo is unexplained. And it's a curious place. And I think, yes, there's a strong case to be made for a presence that's under the ocean. Why? Because people are seeing so-called trans-medium phenomena entering and leaving the ocean, particularly on the West Coast, which is where I face, although I'm in the center and there's a lot of activity here too. And it's been recorded, and there's been film of a little tic-tac type object slowly passing across the coastline, and there's been a craft like a delta-shaped craft or a boomerang shape that was probably 2 to 3 football field, in size, wide, with eruption of lights, and that was in 2010. And actually, I saw something very similar myself in about 2014 when I had family visiting. So it's a very unusual place. There are curiosities that we could touch on. I imagine that if we're seeing things here now in the 21st century, imagine what the very first sailors would have seen, say, from Portugal, who were using Mauritius and the islands as a stopping point on the spice route, in which the Dutch then kind of took over. But we don't really have any historical documents that talk about the phenomena. It's a fascinating place. We suffered. The island was used for slavery. It was also a part of what the British created and called the Great Project, which was indentured labor, which was contract labor from primarily India. Before that, the physical slavery of the African people that were here. And so there's a lot of traumatic history to the island too. And there's a dark history. We have a UNESCO UN World Heritage Site on the southeast corner of the island called Le Morne, which is a gorgeous mountain which just sticks out on the spit, and it comes out of the flat land. It's very iconic. You may have seen, Jimmy, there's some kind of images of Mauritius of what people think is an underwater waterfall, but it's actually an optical illusion, and it's just at that spot. And that's where a lot of the slaves used to escape to and run away, and they were called the Marooners. And they were living off things like rats, and they were extremely resourceful and smart to survive out on the Morne. And so there is this kind of difficult history. There's a beautiful aspect that came out of it, the culture. There's a dance that's called the Sega, which comes from the word chiga, which has East African origins. And this was like the music that the slaves developed with a very distinct kind of beat on the ravan, which is like a hand drum, and is part of the sort of iconic identity of the island. The reason the British came here was because it was highly strategic in the Napoleonic Wars, and the French were using French pirates called corsairs, and they were négociants in French, and they were attacking these defenseless British merchant vessels and looting the cargoes. And at the time, in fact, the French, which people don't really know about, there is a link between Mauritius and the United States and the War for Independence, because there was a naval captain, or admiral, I should say, that basically came to the island, and the island fitted out his ships, and his name was Suffren, and he went to the States and he helped the Americans, the US, to defeat the British. So there's a very sort of subtle link between the islands, and funnily enough, the US sent their first ever diplomat in the world to Mauritius, and his name was Nicholas Pike. So there is a hidden history, and it's amazing. So yeah, this guy Nicholas Pike, he was an American consul, and he came here in 1872, and we think the States did this as an acknowledgement of Mauritius's contribution to the War of Independence, 1775 to 80 something, isn't that right, Jimmy? My memory's going a bit funny, but
something went down here around that time.
Yeah, something.
For us, it lasted. We had the War of 1812. I mean, the British burnt the White House down. A lot of people don't know that. It didn't end in 1776. The UK was pretty pissed off. They were pretty pissed off. And so let's.
The global trend. Yeah.
But the other side of this, when it comes to what is going on with UAPs, but that part of the world, that's where things disappeared. MH370 disappeared down there somewhere.
You're right. And I know somebody that thinks that they saw it flying over the island on that day. And he owns like a little kind of eatery in a little town nearby. And we now know through kind of signals that satellites picked up that it did cross the Indian Ocean and probably headed towards a very sensitive location called Diego Garcia, which is legally Mauritian territory, but was excised by the British government on independence under pressure from the Lyndon Johnson and then the JFK, John F. Kennedy governments, because there's something about this location, and I think yes, there's a geopolitical advantage to having an Indian Ocean base, and it's within reach of the Middle East and so on. But if we think about the timeline of UAPs and the fact that, this was really seen and known about before 1947 and Roswell and all of that. The timeline kind of fits and makes sense. And, if we're seeing these phenomena in the States and particularly here, what relevance does an offshore base that's, hundreds of miles away in the middle of the Indian Ocean, connected to Mauritius, got to do with this? And there have been reports in the war zone of personnel that were asked to go inside on the base, and they were expecting an arrival. And these guys, they know the sound of all the different aircraft jet engines and can, tell you what it is just by listening. But there were occasions where there was zero noise, zero sound. And we know that it's used for telemetry and tracking for NASA and SpaceX missions. I mean, this is speculation, but there is something there and to it that we can't pin down that may hint at something unusual and technological that may be going on there too, in addition to conventional naval base and USAF use. And it's interesting. And I think that it's really important to look at the ancient history of the island and the location and everywhere in the world, actually, of significant, historic value, and how that links to UAP. And, what's unusual about Mauritius is that there was some research, I think, in 2013, and it was published in a journal. I think it was Geoscience or Nature Geoscience. And they basically worked out that 750 million years ago, the Earth landmass was gathered into this huge single continent called Rodinia, I think it was, and that there was a breakup, that there were hundreds of submerged islands around this region, which is science fact, and the BBC covered that. And Mauritius is just like a relic that just happens to be above the water level, the sea level, the Indian Ocean. So there is research that says that we're part of a lost continent, and it's between Madagascar, as I mentioned, the other M, and India, which is just to the north, and what was called Mauritius. And that's, I think, part of the sort of puzzle. We've got this triangle of landmass. It's linked to volcanic eruptions, of course. The way that they managed to date the age of the rock and the bedrock here were through these little kind of minerals called zircons, Z-I-R-C-O-N. And these are dated something like up to 600 million years ago. Then that's the sort of ancient bedrock. And then you've got like a more recent level, which is, I think it's about 9 million years, if I recall. And so we have this really ancient continent. We know that the landmass here in the Indian Ocean is much thicker than anywhere else on Earth. It's some of the thickest landmass on the planet. We know scientifically that this affects gravitational waves differently. There's something unique about the physicality of the location. There's something unique about the natural world. As I mentioned, we have myths of Lemuria. And, we hear in kind of various shows and so on, oh, Lemuria was here, here, here. And there's a kind of a blending of these kind of so-called lost island continents and nations, or whatever they were. But Lemuria is a Malgache, a Madagascan word. So we know that Lemuria is geographically located in the Indian Ocean, and it basically means souls of the departed. But who was here and who left? So it's fascinating. There's also a myth of the Tamils from sort of central southwest India, if I recall, and they had the myth of Kamari Kandam, which again covers this landmass that joined India, down to where we are in Mauritius and Madagascar, forming this triangle. And then you get kind of myths of the home of Krishna and the city of Dwarka being connected to the mainland, and that there's a sort of submerged landmass or bridge that used to connect Sri Lanka to India. And it's super curious. And the science is backing this up, and the surveys that have been done. And then if we turn to the natural world, we have the Lemur, which is made famous through the Madagascar films and the cartoon or animation series of films. And the dodo, which is, as I mentioned, it's how can you have this one bird animal that had tiny little wings that was pretty much, it was flightless, it couldn't fly, it was very large and fat, it had a huge beak, but only native to Mauritius. And I think that Oxford University Museum of Natural History, they have the only specimen on Earth. And it has preserved soft tissue. The DNA indicates that I think the closest living relative is a pigeon, the Nicobar pigeon, if I'm right. Don't quote me. Which was it was a ground-dwelling pigeon from Southeast Asia. So how did it get here if there was just the ocean? But I think there was a landmass that connected Mauritius at some point, and that's what the evidence points to potentially. So the details of the journey of this dodo bird to this remote tiny speck of volcanic rock remains very blurry at best.
Well, and the
DNA is a mystery.
Yeah, and there's another part to this too as well, because the Indian Ocean is not that deep. And it's a little bit different than the other oceans of the world. Now, when you go back into deep history and you look at how the ocean levels have fluctuated, how the continents have shifted, and how we've had land masses shifted, and the compression of the Earth's crust and how that changes everything too as well. So the geography that we see today is nothing compared to what it was in ancient history. So that explains an awful lot. But the other part about this is you guys have a lot of sunken cities in and around the area. And that evidence is right there for us to investigate. The ocean currents that are there are very, very strong. So it's not like you can just go and scuba dive and go and look at these sunken cities, but they are there along the coastline all over the place.
Yeah, you're right. And everything more or less was introduced to the island. And the only genuine indigenous animal was the dodo. I mean, it's just volcanic rock full of minerals and, potential for growth. But, the deer were introduced, the Javanese deer, pigs, goats. There were things that came off the ships, macaque monkeys, all sorts of things. But weirdly, there's a company that wants to bring the dodo back. And I forget the name of the company. And I know someone that knows one of the owners. That's right, it's Colossal Biosciences. And there was a press release, and you have these evolutionary biologists from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and there was a paleontologist or paleogeneticist, I think might be the right word. They're basically going to do a Jurassic, or they're planning to do a Jurassic Park of first introducing the dodo, which is obviously extinct, which is just, it's surreal. And
let's set up let's set up for when we return after the break. We're going to shift from dodos, and dodos very important, but to UAPs and UFOs. After you move to Mauritius, how soon after you arrived on the island did you have your first sighting or contact experience?
Within 2 months, within a month to 2 months.
And what happened?
It was completely unexpected. I'm in the upstairs of an apartment that we'd moved to temporarily coming here, and which is a sort of fairly densely populated area. And I go outside to move my car. This is September 2013, Jimmy. And I'm outside, I'm moving my car, and I'm just sort of, something distracts me, and I'm sort of looking up at the sky towards the kind of west coast, towards a place called Albion, which means it's ancient English for England, bizarrely. And there is just what appears to be a very large elliptical, bright orange sun type object that's just filling the sky. And it reminds me of now that I'm researched, it reminds me of a sighting of a sort of orange bright craft that was recorded over Mexico City in the 80s. But it was more kind of like a elliptical sun. And it was mesmerizing. I just thought, what is that? Why? What is it? I mean, it's not moving. It's just sat in the sky. And I was pretty tired at the time, if I'm honest. And I'm sort of asking myself questions. And I just sort of went to bed. I just thought I must be hallucinating. Maybe I'm exhausted. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to bed. So I go to bed. The next day I wake up and I'm listening to the radio, having my breakfast, because in Mauritius, people listen to the radio a lot, like your listeners, Jimmy. And there's all these calls coming in, floods and floods of phone calls coming in about a UFO sighting over central to west coast Mauritius. And it's not the first. So again, I'd definitely seen something. I think there had been some kind of fudged, unclear reports claiming it to be SpaceX rocketry re-entering the atmosphere, which I don't know any rocketry that produces
in 2000.
Like a
wait.
sound.
In 2013? No, not back in 2013. I would have to look that up, but 2013.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the first time that explanation has been advanced. It's
oh, sure. Well, we have that all the time here in California. I've myself, exactly. I have lost my cookies a couple of times over a launch from Vandenberg. And because you can't explain, we were in, we're going to head to a break in a second. I had some kind of conference. I can't remember what it was, but we were doing something down like in Laguna Beach. And I don't know, this is 7, 8, 9 years ago. When we're driving and we're right next to the airport down there, John Wayne Airport and MacArthur Boulevard. And so I'm in the car and I look up. Right in front of me, facing west out over the ocean, is this blue thing going across the sky, but it's like changing. It's like a jellyfish. I'm like, oh my God. And we arrive, we flip a U-turn. I pull into the parking lot, jump out of the car, take out the cell phone. I film it. But here's the thing. All the traffic stopped. Everybody was getting out of their cars. And I'm watching this, and then it takes this turn and goes up. And I filmed the whole thing for like 5 minutes.
Amazing.
SpaceX. Now, for a minute, I peed on myself. I admit it. You can't explain, when you see something like that, so singular, and it was beautiful, and it was big, but it was SpaceX, and I should have known better, but it was pretty incredible to see. But this occurs all the time, and people see these sightings. What makes me happy about it is that people are looking up. Right. And they are questioning things. And that I think that's okay. So it turns out to be SpaceX, but people are paying attention, aren't they?
Yeah. And ultimately, we want the truth. And we have to be honest and not invested in determining things that have an explanation. which is why I always kind of question myself, question everything, although everything is seems to be what it is. And it's sort of it goes on a scale of something subtle like a light, a sphere, or an orb that just appears and kind of transits close by, or something phenomenal like something the size of a mountain that just appears and then erupts into fairy lights and then disappears within seconds, which is obviously recorded in many cases, and particularly in the work of our friend Jacques Vallée, and this kind of elusive aspect to it that's kind of titillating us and teasing us and sort of nudging us along the path of understanding, and or maybe just paying attention, as you said, Jimmy, just to actually absorb this. And maybe there's an understanding that's happening within the human psyche that is operating at a much deeper level that affects all of us. And I think that's probably the road it goes down.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, J.P. Hague, live from Mauritius. I'm Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. This is Jimmy Church. Please visit and explore Egypt this October 3rd through the 14th, 2024 with Billy, Elizabeth, myself, and very special guest and the #1 podcaster in the world, Sean Kelly. It's simple to do. Just go to forbiddenknowledge.com and click on upcoming tours, or click on the link below. We'll see you there. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. And right now, if you get a Game Changer membership for a limited time, you will get Fade to Black blend coffee with your Game Changer membership. That's right. We have 2 t-shirts. We have the original, the classic Fade to Black t-shirt. You know you want one. Post a picture. Send it to us. We'll put it in our Fade to Black gallery. And we've got the new official Fade to Black t-shirt drawn by Michael Oming. 2 t-shirts, 2 ways to get them. Get yours today. Everything is in stock. Everything gets autographed. Everything includes shipping, and you're going to get a tracking number. And with a Game Changer membership, you get an email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads of the show. Those are uploaded every single night after the show to the website. So don't delay. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, JP Hague is with us live from Mauritius. You got to love technology. And so you're the director of MUFON out there, and you've got your own UFO organization, too, as well, reporting on everything in the area, in and around the Indian Ocean. What kind of sightings do you guys have out there in Mauritius, and how many get reported?
Yeah, that's a good question. The issue here is that because we're a small island, people are very hesitant to come forward and report sightings. It's a much more, let's say, conservative environment. You know, part and parcel of being a small community is kind of your reputation, credibility. And in fact, the reportings are very few and far between because of that. And that's why I sort of opened the MUFON net, because, you know, I want to capture and just engage with other people that have had these sightings. And often they kind of report them, but then they go quiet and the lead goes cold. And they're often incredible sightings, you know, craft with little portholes landing on the mountainside close to the capital with hieroglyphic or other glyphic type inscriptions on it. Bizarre kind of suited beings that kind of are inside, very much commensurate with the literature and some of the more stranger cases that we've seen in the past, particularly from the US. But there aren't many cases. You have to, word of mouth goes a long way on this, and sort of meeting people, finding out their stories, and that's more productive. And the UFOlogy Mauritius Indian Ocean idea is really just to kind of allow people to communicate and get in touch if they feel that they can and want to. But it has been amazing, the things that I've learned about, many things that I've personally seen as well. It's a hotbed, and I just wonder how many people have actually had experiences and seen them but not reported it. For fear of ridicule. And there's just so much to capture here. I mean, we've got a game reserve on the West Coast where you have 10 guys that are ordinary people, fairly low income families, and they're constantly 24/7 in this game reserve where you have the deer hunting and all the rest, looking after the land. And I went there one day and I met one of them. And at first, when I said, look, I know that the area is active. There are things that people have seen that they can't explain. And what have you seen? And at first he said, no, we don't see anything here. And I said to him, look, I've seen things. It's affected me personally. You're free. You can trust me, and let's talk about it. And he sort of looked at me, blank expression on face, silent, long pregnant pause, and then he said, "There are things that we have seen." This is in Creole. There are things that we've seen that we can't even tell our wives and our families. Strange things, and it's
well,
it's
like what are they seeing?
Lights that just are darting around above them, very close to this spot on a mountain. I call it Tamarin Mountain. It's easier to understand and identify there. I have a video of a craft that looks like a delta-shaped object that's just floating above the ocean. There's no shipping or oil rigs or anything of the kind. I mean, this is a tourist destination with nothing there other than beautiful hotels on the coastline. And this thing is just erupting. And the story behind it is incredible. There were a group of friends that were on the mountain. And this kind of went on throughout the night. They had just gone up there just to relax. And little did they know that they were going to see something huge and silent like this. With even one of the witnesses in his car, he thought that he saw something humanoid or human walking behind them, crossing one side of the road to the other, whilst the car's parked on this mountain. And you can hear the wind, you can hear mobile phones ringing, and he's calling his father. It's authentic, and I met the witness. And I saw something very similar myself here in, I think it was around March of 2014, and I'm just walking out of a shop close by, and it's around 7:30 p.m. And I'm looking at the main mountain on the plateau, which is called Thumb Mountain, Le Pouce. It looks like that. And I'm just sort of there with my bags of shopping, going to the car, and it just appears above the mountain, this enormous thing with these lights that just erupt. And it was fairly soon after meeting this witness who'd had the experience and recorded it on a Sony 2010 SLR camera back in August of 2010. So there's a lot of unusual kind of
JP, let me jump in. When you say this enormous thing, what are you saying? Can you describe it for us?
Yeah, it was a boomerang or a delta-shaped craft the size of 3 football fields. You can see a red light that is just sort of moving slowly in the sky. And then a little bit like the Phoenix lights, you see lights starting to light up and appear, but they're just much, much smaller and, in the hundreds. And then it starts to kind of, what's the word? It kind of pulses, and the lights move a bit like fairy lights in a rhythmical serpentine-like fashion. And that was a massive craft that was seen. There's another set of witnesses who are a family who I got to know, and we get a lot of anticyclones, so cyclones that go anti-clockwise that pass through here, every kind of around January to March of each year. And the last really big one to hit was in 1994, and it was called Hollanda. You have this anticyclone that passes through. It takes out the electric supply, the water supply for a while, for a couple of weeks. And, it was a big deal. Anyway, you have this family that are living in the same location on this west coast of Tamarin, where you had the game reserve and then the mountain where this other experience happened. This family they've got 2 young kids, a son and a daughter who are now my age. The son is just watching this light hovering over the ocean from his sort of mountainside or coastal area house. and he's just fixated by this thing. He's looking at it all day long, and it's sort of starting to unnerve the witness, who's now a friend, who's sort of watching her son. The boy wants to have his lunch there. He wants to just sit there and eat and watch this light. They're like, what is it? Could it be a ship? Is it boating? There's just been a hurricane, so people aren't kind of engaging in leisure because there's just too much to clean up and deal with. And then at sort of nightfall, this object just dematerializes and then materializes pretty much above their house of this family. And it's like a metallic 2-tiered cake with 2 levels. The witness and the witnesses, I should say, they describe beings inside, of which 1 or 2 were kind of moving quite a lot, and they think that they might have been controlling this craft. They had a tenant who was living in a cottage on the land, and they tried to wake him up, but he just wouldn't wake up because they were so scared. I should say the husband was away on business during this time, so he wasn't there. So they go to this tenant who's from France. He doesn't wake up. There's tons of crazy stuff going on. This craft is kind of being orbited by little objects that appear similar in shape to the gimbal, which is almost like a little bell-shaped object. And they're following them. They go up to the neighbor's house just up the road to wake them up because they're so scared. The larger kind of 2-tiered metallic object is just floating there. And these gimbal type, I call them satellites, just follow them up the road, just watching them hovering. And then they come back. At this point, she brings the 2 children into the house. But the son wants to go outside, and he does go outside. And he starts approaching this metallic craft. And the mother, the main witness who I've spoken to, she says that he's within a meter of touching this thing, and she screams out to him, "Stop!" And he stops. He doesn't touch it, and then brings them inside again. And the curtains, there's all this electrostatic energy or effects, and the curtains are kind of like lifting up, like a paranormal movie. And then the next morning, everything's kind of calm and back to normal, but the kids and the mom are in the main bedroom together, just huddled up in fear. This craft, the husband returns from his business trip abroad, and I met the whole family, very nice people. At the time, there weren't so many cinemas and things to do back in the early 90s here. They had to drive to another location just to see a film. And they're driving as a family in their car to this location, and the craft is kind of watching them. It just appears 2 or 3 weeks later, and it's kind of in the background, and they can see it from the car, which obviously causes stress for the witnesses. Anyway, there's more to it, but we're sort of strapped for time. But it's unbelievable the sort of things that people have seen. And then you look into their history, and the grandfather that was a fighter pilot in the Second World War, he saw Foo Fighters during the Second World War. I mean, there's these familial connections to it. And
are you suggesting
that happen?
JP? So 1 meter away, and I think you also said that they could see beings in the windows of the craft. So the craft was that close. Am I understanding you correctly?
That's right. It never landed. It sort of hovered above the ground, and nothing ever grew back after that experience. And in the end, the owner after them just put a swimming pool there because nothing was growing, and there's this circular patch, but it never touched the ground. And the sun is kind of within touching distance of this craft. The witness sketched what she saw. And the crania are about 50% larger than ours. Classic kind of bulb-headed, slightly bony in appearance, very thin, kind of spindly type appearance bodies. Classic kind of I wouldn't say they were greys. They were different. And if this thing came out of the ocean, and people are seeing transmedium objects coming in and out of the ocean in this location, and have done for years, you kind of it's tempting to put two and two together and say, well, it could be this group of whatever they are, or not. Could be there's something else there. But it's it's intense and it's bizarre, and they're good, normal, credible people. After the event, the witnesses or the mother, she's approached by a group that come over from Australia, would you believe, and they claim to be journalists, but there were 10 of them. And they said, yes, we're just going to gather the facts and we'll put it into a press article and we'll send you it. They never sent anything to the mother of the house. And, you know, we wonder whether at the time that was the closest kind of center or grouping of intelligence agents that were working as part of the Five Eyes network, perhaps. And they just came and somehow they picked up what had happened. We know that the meteorological station here sometimes picks up activity like this too, because the witness actually contacted the head of the Met here, and they say, yeah, sometimes we can track them all along the West Coast. I have pilots for the national airline that have seen things. One is a close friend and a senior captain. And there's some incredible stories, but they don't tend to report them. And this pilot that I know has also seen something very similar to what Ryan Graves saw when he was doing his sortie in his jet. He's now retired, which was like a flying black cube. And this was over an entry point to land over Paris in Europe. So it's strange. And bizarrely, he has an aunt, a relative, that wrote a book with Jacques Vallée again on UFOs in Russia. So again, there's this kind of entanglement element to this, and family connections, specifically for these kind of more, crazy, wilder type of interactions that happen.
As soon as I find out somebody is a pilot, I go right there. It doesn't really matter what kind of pilot, right? But I'll go right there. Okay, man, what have you seen? And yeah. I can't get into specifics because of everything in the background of this. I can't get into that, but I'll say, and I hate it when people do that, but I have to do it here. Anyway, so I'm talking to a pilot who does international flights on very big jets for a very major commercial airline. That's all I'm going to say. But so I asked him, okay, what have you seen? He goes, I've only seen one thing, but it was nuts. I said, okay. And later I'll tell you who this was, but and the background to it. I can't do it live on the air. I promise that I wouldn't, but I'll say this. He said they were flying over the Atlantic. He's the pilot. He's got a co-pilot. And in front of them, they're approaching at their altitude, a black rectangle, and it's sideways, right? And they're coming up on it, and they've got to change their altitude, and they fly under it. And as they approach it, this is how he describes it. Now, this is crazy. He said it was a black domino sideways, and it was at least a mile wide. And it's huge. And he said it was thick, like a domino, those proportions. And they flew right under it, right through the center of it. And it went right over the jet. And he says he turns to his co-pilot and goes, okay, like, what are we going to do with that? Nothing. And they didn't report it. They didn't call it in, and they kept flying. And here's the thing with that. How often does that go down? Well, I would say it probably goes down a lot. And I'm talking about the sighting itself and then what gets reported, right? Probably none of it, I would think. and they didn't report it. And I kind of understand why. But today it's a different atmosphere where it's more okay now than it's ever been in the past to go ahead and step forward and start reporting these things, right?
That's right. It's starting again. Everything is coming from the States with the sort of safety and aerospace work that Ryan and friend Dr. Aya Whiteley are starting to work on, and kind of allow pilots to do this. Because I mean, my contact and friend here and others, it's just not worth it for them. It's too much of a risk. I mean, this black cube that he saw, similar to Ryan, it was the size of we call it in English, a shopping trolley. I don't know what you'd say in US English, but it was big. And he said, if that thing touched us, we would have been dead. You know, it's simple as that. It was pretty close. Nothing we could do. And, you know, they've obviously got all their passengers in these state-of-the-art jets with them. And it's scary because it's not planned for. It's not something you expect to deal with, you know, compared to turbulence or crosswinds or anything like that.
Yeah,
so, I sympathize.
I fly a lot, and I'm ready to go. My cell phone is there. It's switched to camera, and I'm looking out the window. If I'm awake, I'm looking. I haven't caught the magic moment. I've seen other jets and I've seen stuff, but I haven't seen anything crazy. But I'm good to go. My camera is at the ready. Seriously. So I was with a pilot, a helicopter pilot, over the weekend, and I posted pictures of us together next to his helicopter, and I went straight to him. I was like, okay, what have you seen? And he goes, you know, I'm going to tell you something crazy. A couple of years ago, there were these reports around LAX, and you may remember this, JP, of like this flying jetpack dude. And there were, and there were 3 sightings by pilots landing at LAX, right? And they're going, there's somebody out here in a jetpack, right? There's some guy flying around. And so the pilot of the helicopter for the LA County Sheriff Search and Rescue, he had said to me, he goes, man, I wanted to see this thing. So yeah, I kept my eyes peeled, flying in and around LAX, doing my work, looking for this jetpack guy. I said, well, did you see it? He goes, no, I didn't. But I'm always looking. I said, have you ever seen a UFO? He said, no, I haven't, but I believe it. Of course, right? There's got to be, but I haven't personally. I said, would you tell me? He said, I would. But I think pilots now are okay with it, more okay than they ever have been in the past. But with all of these reports that are going on with the military and everything else, that I think pilots now are looking for this stuff, and I agree. I think they're excited about it.
And beyond that, I mean, and this brings Mauritius back into the fold. I think that governments, particularly the US, and I'm speculating here with kind of some authority that I can't disclose, sadly, which is always the case in this field, that, you know, infrastructure is being used in host nation states, friendly states, such as here, that is monitoring it. And it's done covertly under the nose of people that have literally no idea or interest in the subject. And that data is valuable. And I think that other nation states and, you know, sort of competitor nation states are trying to tap that data. And we had a really bizarre incident in Mauritius here that coincided with my own research. There's a beautiful location in the south of the island called Bellon, and there is a radome satellite base there. And it's built by a company called Korpsberg, which is a kind of a hybrid type company that the Norwegian Space Agency sponsors and works with to produce, you know, satellites for all kinds of things. You know, it's used for weather, aviation. We're just talking about pilots, maritime communications. I'm thinking surveillance, satellite comms. There's the coastal or the Coast Guard stuff, surveillance that goes on an island like this. military and civil flight simulations, all this kind of stuff, broadcasting. So I mean, that's normal. There, not everything is a conspiracy, but strangely, there is a site that's known for a kind of an energy vortex. It's called the Vortex. It's a spiritual location where people go to spend time. It was founded because there was a visitor from Germany or Switzerland who was sick, and in a dream she was told to go there, and I think she healed. And this satellite base is just next to this site. It looks down to it. It's very close to where there are 7 pyramids on the island that form the constellation of Orion.
Wait, what? There's 7 pyramids on Mauritius?
But hold up, they're not like the pyramids that you and I go to see in Egypt. They're more like there are very similar ones, almost identical in style, in Tenerife Island, which is also off the northwest coast of Africa. A place called Guimar, I believe. And there's also very similar pyramids in Sicily, the island on the south of Italy, where the boot kicks the island, if you will. So
wait. Let's get back to these 7 pyramids. And you mentioned Orion. Are they man-made pyramids, or are they natural?
Yeah, I mean, no, they're definitely man-made. They're made of beautiful kind of volcanic rock in sort of tiered, sort of stepped levels. They're not particularly high. They're about 12 meters in height, and they have between 6 and 11 terraced steps, and they're in the middle of the sugarcane, and they're beautiful. It's a shame that the government have built a motorway that kind of dissects it, which is crazy, because it links very closely to the airport, the international airport, where all the kind of tourists come and have an amazing stay here. So there's 7 of them. As I said, they're very similar. They're volcanic rocks that have been very carefully placed with a flat top off the western coast of Africa in Tenerife. They're the Canary Islands, Sicily as well. Beautiful. And bizarrely, believe it or not, they are in front of a mountain that's called Lion Mountain. And it looks like a giant lion or a sphinx, but it's very rough. It's nothing like, the Great Sphinx of Egypt on the Giza Plateau that we've been to. But it's curious, it's strange.
JP, I love you, man. I got to keep you focused. What are you saying here? Who built them?
We don't know, and it could even be natural. I mean, there's an esoteric author, an artist that comes from a family of Rosicrucians called Malcolm de Chazal, and he wrote a very famous book here called Petrus Mock in 1951. And he said that there is this intelligence in nature that can create these forms. So a very esoteric writer, I mean, make of it as you will. I don't think that aliens or anything put them there, but these are man-made pyramids, and there is a mountain that is shaped like a lion, and we need to work it out, whether it is natural, whether there's an intelligence in nature, whether it's a coincidence. We can't say. And but it's strange. You have a mountain like a lion shape called Lion Mountain. You have 7 pyramids in the constellation of Orion, which is, there's the theory of the Orion's belt. Robert Bauval, the Belgian engineer theory of the 3 sisters and the 3 pyramids of Giza on the plateau forming that shape. And we have the same thing here, but it's on a much, much smaller scale. And they're clearly man-made. They're not ultra sophisticated. There is a sign from the colonial era that says that they were protected national monuments by the Monuments Board. So they were valuable, they were valued, but we don't know much about them. And there's no real research or investigation into it. It's like a virgin territory. And they're in perfect astronomical alignment. I think they were man-made, but why? Why is there this kind of link to Orion? Why is there this satellite base there? That there has been scandal over spying and links to Antarctica. It's strange, and there have been beings and bizarre kind of interactions happening nearby too. And it's we don't want to mix things, but there is a strange kind of pattern that emerges, which is very easily done. and the dots can be drawn.
There's nothing strange about it at all. I want some more information here, though. Okay, so the seven sisters, are they shaped like the seven sisters and with the same arrangement as the Pleiades?
Not the Pleiades. They're the Orion constellation or Osiris.
The Orion. Okay.
Yeah, so but it's the positioning is. I mean, I've sort of bizarre. I mean, check this is how strange this whole research is and the subject. I knew the pyramids mapped something, and I just didn't have the time to look into it. And then a friend of mine, I'm at a conference presenting in the States, and a friend of mine says, I'm sat at this beautiful hotel on the waterfront in the capital, and a bunch of UFOs in this formation just literally slowly passed in front of the waterfront, and she videoed it and sent me the photos. And it was at the time where I was trying to work out what is the constellation, and I saw the UFOs that she photographed. I said, it looks like Orion, and just something made me twig that there's a connection between Orion through this sighting and the pyramids. It's bizarre, very bizarre, and there's no kind of empirical research or evidence that kind of supports this, but it's clearly, if you put the Orion constellation side by side with the seven pyramids that we have, and albeit there's a pyramid missing to complement it, that's what it looks like, and it is.
Well, we can look at it a few ways. We can look at it as what the ancients were seeing in the night sky in the past, right, because that was their IMAX theater, right? That's what they didn't have the distractions that you and I have today, right? They didn't have these things, but to replicate what they were seeing in the sky astronomically on the ground, I think that is just as interesting as anything else, because they had an understanding of astronomy and years and calendars and everything else. And I find that completely fascinating. But what's even more interesting here is that you don't know who built them. And we have that same story in every country on planet Earth, don't we? It's the same. Well, this is great and it's big. Who built it? Don't know.
That's right.
Right.
And it looks like it was a global culture. There was a global kind of phenomena here. It's not just Egypt.
For sure.
It's all around the world, obviously. So
yeah, for sure. Now, in the time that we have left, you've touched upon this, but I find this really, 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 really interesting, which is observation. And we have the five eyes, and we hear that all the time. But I think most when they hear about the five eyes, they don't actually understand what is going on. Just really briefly, tell everybody who is in the five eyes and what is it?
Yeah, so it's an Anglo-US kind of cooperative assemblage of intelligence agencies between the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And I'm a British national. I'm also Mauritian, but I consider myself more British because that's what I've known. And I would never want to compromise any kind of national security of my own country and so on. But there was an incident fairly soon after the Pentagon's Office of Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, released this kind of groundbreaking 10-page short acknowledgement report on the fact that UAPs are real, and we know certain people behind it managed to get it through and did everybody a favor. And within months of this report coming out, around the satellite base, I looked at the annual reports. As a lawyer, I like facts and evidence, and I looked into the annual reports of the potential activities of this radome base in the south of the island. And it's curious. I mean, there are these kind of composite radomes, and you can see pictures that have been taken by NOAA, the US Navy, of the site, and they have space frame radomes. They look like golf balls. and they're clearly not Mauritian infrastructure. But next to this location.
Okay, we lost you. That was fading out and fading out and fading out. Everybody was seeing this happen. And you know what's interesting about this? And we'll see if we can get JP back. He is now gone. As soon as you start talking about the Five Eyes and the collection of intelligence, right? We're right there, and click, gone. Very interesting. So we'll see if we can get JP back and get things reset. But the timing of that was pretty suspect, wasn't it? Because I literally said, "Who are the Five Eyes?" and who was involved. And that was pretty interesting. The other part about this is, and when we get JP back, we'll see if we can talk about this further. I won't hold back. In that area, we do have Diego Garcia. Now, Diego Garcia is certainly one of the most secret locations and Air Force bases and military installations on planet Earth. No question about it. And what's the advantage of Diego Garcia? Well, let me put it to you this way. Area 51, we know where it's at. As a matter of fact, you can drive to the gates. Yeah, you can. You want to jump in your car and you want to drive to the gates of Area 51, you can do that, right? Right here, Edwards Air Force Base out here, you can drive to it. Lockheed Skunk Works down the street, right? You can drive to it. You can look at it. You can see it. And if you come out here, get a hold. I'll take you there. Diego Garcia is not that kind of party. That's right. You're not driving there. You're not jumping in a boat and cruising out there. You can't, and it's not going to happen. So that kind of location is perfect for anything that you don't want anybody to know anything about. It's really that simple. How many other, now Diego Garcia, like Area 51 was denied forever. Until like Independence Day, you could throw in a little bit of Bob Lazar and that too as well. But until Independence Day, and that 1994, 1995, officially, no, Area 51 was said not to exist. It's really that easy. All right, but now we know. And it's the same thing with Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia, now we know about it, but you can't see it. Go to, and I've tried, go to Google Earth, type in Diego Garcia, right? You might get, sometimes you don't, but you might get the little tag, and you go over to Google Earth and Google Satellite and zoom in. It's not there, right? You can't look at Diego Garcia, but we know about it. But you can't drive to it. You can't cruise out to it. It's the perfect secret location. How many more Diego Garcias are there in the world? And I would venture to say probably quite a lot. And where, now I'm going to say this, JP has not come back. Yeah, he got zoned in on. He got checked out tonight. We'll see if he does come back. But how many more, right? And so with the Five Eyes, and we're talking about New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and the United States, with them sharing their intelligence networks with each other and calling it the Five Eyes, I find that very, very, very interesting. And with not only the Indian Ocean, but you have all of the Pacific and the Southern Pacific and the area in and around Australia and New Zealand. But that stretches all the way over to the United States and then up into Canada and then over to the United Kingdom. So with that kind of observation capabilities there, and I've talked to many people about this, how much data are they collecting, and how much of it is being shared? And then we do the flip. Let's flip this over. When David Grush went in front of Congress, raised his hand, and swore under oath that he was going to tell the truth, and he starts disclosing that we have craft, we are reverse engineering these craft, and I know where this is going down. I knew at that moment that something strange was about to happen. And what am I saying? What I'm suggesting is this. Stuff had to have started to get moved. And we had heard, I'm talking about flying saucers. Let's not beat around the bush here. And if anything was at a location, how quickly that he was disclosing, right? He says he's got addresses, he's got names, right? How much of this was moved? And the list of stuff and the information that he gave to the IG and that he gave to Congress, how much of that was already known that it was going to be disclosed on national TV? And this paperwork and the list of addresses and where these locations were. The first thing you're going to do, you're going to move it. And probably, if you can, if it's movable, out of the country. That's exactly what you're going to do. And with a situation like the Five Eyes, who is now, I'm not saying that this is fact, and I don't want people to get upset here, but Australia is wide open. That's a big country to move stuff to. Canada's wide open. It's a big country you can move stuff to. Right? Think about that. New Zealand, that's perfect. Right? And I am sure that's exactly what went on. And where would be one of the waypoints for this? Diego Garcia. Is Diego Garcia the perfect spot and depository for this, where you don't want people to see stuff or find out? Area 51 you can go to. Lockheed Skunk Works is right down the street. Why is that important? Could a member of Congress get a team together and roll up on Edwards or roll up on Area 51 or roll up on Lockheed Skunk Works or Raytheon or Northrop Grumman and say, okay, we've got reports that you've got something here. We want to see Hangar 18, right? That's right, Patterson. But you understand what I'm saying. And they go and you can come on in. Open it up and it's empty. Well, that's why. That's exactly why. That's the Diego Garcia concept to all of this. If you're a member of Congress, you're a senator, and you want to go and check out a location, you can't go to Diego Garcia. The president of the United States probably couldn't go to Diego Garcia. And how many other locations are there exactly like that? And if you're going to turn around and bring that up like we were about to do with JP, look what happened. Isn't that interesting? But I've always considered that. I've always considered that. Well, okay. JP has been locked out. So I am going to go ahead and wrap this show tonight. And I do want to thank everybody that was here tonight with us. And tomorrow night, right here on Fade to Black, we have got the one and only, the Leo King is here with us. That's right, David Palmer, tomorrow night on Fade to Black. It's going to be a Fade to Black Leo King evening. Really looking forward to it. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palmer, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. I want to thank Dex. I want to thank Bill. I want to thank Jonacide. I want to thank Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with David Palmer, that's right, the Leo King, I want you to be safe. Go back, Lee Tepe.